This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. We just did a major overhaul of our patrons-only Discord server, so if you'd like to join our growing community and get early access to every video, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought.
Say the line, Bart!
Billionaires? Bad. Hello, dear viewer, charitable viewer, generous Patreon supporting, or at the very least subscribe button pressing and bell ringing viewer. Today we're talking about charity, and how something so bad can feel so good. Or actually, how something so good can be so bad. Except, of course, when you give your money to me on Patreon, because that's very different, and actually, you know what, just forget I brought it up. Today we're talking about philanthropy. We're talking about philanthropy because behind one of the most publicly uncontroversial things our society has produced hides a whole web of genuinely awful stuff. So, of course, it's important to talk about that. Anyway, before we get started, yes, Hasan Minhaj did already make a wildly successful video on this topic. But as far as I'm concerned, he's only the second best Hasan, so it's like it doesn't count. And you know what? Forget Minhaj, because just like the better Hasan, we're actually going to say the C word. Capitalism. Because unlike what Minhaj implies, this is not just a story of people exploiting a broken system. This is a story of a system that can only survive because people exploit it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with how the scam works. As a quick disclaimer, this video is based on the current general understanding of how government funding and taxes work. If you'd like to see an alternate theory, and one that I think holds a lot of weight, One Dime has a great video which I highly recommend watching. Now, imagine your name is William Henry Gates III. That name sucks, so let's go with Bill for short. It's 1999. You just heard the kid in The Sixth Sense was dead the whole time. And earlier today, the US government ruled your company, Microsoft, to be a monopoly and guilty of violating antitrust laws. The public is split. Some people idolize you and think you're a genius. The rest, well, they don't love that you're a dorky jerk with a bad attitude, or that you're well known for abusing temp workers, cutting medical benefits, suing those who quit, and a slew of anti-competitive business practices. And now they just found out that y'all went and gone did a crime. What do? Well, you do a whole bunch of stuff to try to prove you're not a monopoly, like bankrolling Apple in a desperate bid for competition. But you also do whatever it takes to get people to look away from the wreckage your company could become and the public image you're starting to get associated with. Luckily for you, there's an easy way to do that. What if you announced you were starting your own philanthropy foundation? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Everybody loves philanthropy. It doesn't matter that you really only rebranded from the much too impersonal William H. Gates Foundation because, whoa, did you just dump a fat stack of cash into it for media attention? Good, because that totally works. It actually works so well that over the next 20 years, you'll become unrecognizable to the people who worked under you for decades and to the general public that didn't trust you. You'll become the guy who saves kids. That's point number 1 on the What Philanthropy Does checklist. Philanthropy takes people well known for being unredeemable and turns them into saints. People who, despite hoarding a sum of money big enough to outlive them 1,000 lifetimes, have given away a large enough amount to demand unwavering support from all of us, regardless of the fact that in the meantime, their wealth grows by more than they give. They get all of our support. All of it. Who today dares to say that Bill Gates hasn't made the world a better place? We could stop at that and we'd already have a pretty compelling argument. Bill Gates made all this money explicitly by being a horrible, ultra-competitive, inhuman businessman, exploiting his workers and a market he held a monopoly over just to turn around and launder his reputation with his ill-gotten gains. Video over. Capitalism crushed. Come back next week. But there's more. Because there are at least 3 problems with high-profile philanthropy. 1, it costs the rest of us money. 2, it might not be happening at all, or really just a tiny bit. And 3, it actively breaks democracy. Fun! Let's hit point number 1 first. You're taking my money, big man. One of the big reasons philanthropists give so much is because of something called the Charitable Tax Deduction, which for legal reasons, I am not technically explaining to you right now. Got it? This is just me talking out loud into my microphone, and if it reaches your ears, it's not my fault because I'm not giving you unqualified tax advice, you hear? I'm just talking to myself, which I can prove by saying my social security number out loud. 18326. By donating money to an approved charity, anybody can reduce the amounts they give in taxes to the government by reducing the amount of money they're being taxed on. For you and me, that number is usually limited to around 60% of our gross income, the total money we would have gotten before taxes are taken out. It's a way for the government to acknowledge that you're doing a good thing and reward you with a little less tax on your total gross income. For the ultra-wealthy, those rules technically also apply, but they also get special access to even better, more exclusive rules. The same way their bored apes get them access to better, more exclusive rooms in the metaverse for people who don't have any friends. For the ultra-wealthy, charitable deductions can be applied to stuff that's not money, and that only the wealthy have enough of laying around to just give away. Real estate properties, stock options, capital gains, that kind of stuff. On these assets, the value of which has never ever been hyperinflated and always definitely represents what it's worth, the ultra-wealthy can give to charity in amounts that are trivial to them, but that can end up reducing their taxes by up to 74%, according to these two academics who actually know what they're talking about, unlike the disembodied voice reading these words out loud to himself. And that's on top of all the other tax avoidance strategies that these ultra-rich parasites take on the corporate side of things, with tax haven companies and loopholes, and the more individual-based avoidance schemes we learned about in the Pandora and Paradise papers. Concretely though, what does using the charitable tax deduction like this mean? Well, it means that for every billionaire, quote, giving $1 to charity, we'll get to how much that actually happens in a second, you pay 74 cents of it. Because the truth is that if the government isn't getting those 74 cents on the dollar it was planning on getting, it's got two choices. It can either spend 74 cents less on stuff that you would benefit from, or it can get those 74 cents from you instead. Convenient how that works out. And while the 74-cent figure sounds trivial, the real amount is in the billions. Between 2010 and 2014, the cost the rest of us took on was $246.1 billion. Put all those zeros on screen, I don't care how much it cost me in graphics animation. And the thing is that that number has certainly only gotten bigger in recent years as charitable donations increase in size and deduction laws become more favorable to the ultra-wealthy. And look, if you divide those billions of dollars up evenly among all of us over the 5 years, it doesn't end up being a crazy amount per person. But it's money that was supposed to be used on us, and that we weren't supposed to be paying for in the first place. We were supposed to benefit from that money, not have it taken out of our pockets. Because that's the second part of this whole thing. As much as billionaire-funded charities want to make it seem like they're actually giving away their dollars and putting them back into your hands through their foundations, they're really not. Like, not at all. Oh man, it's gonna blow your mind when you find out in like 10 seconds. Point number 2. Where's that money going, big man? Every time you hear of a guy like Bill Gates giving away some $20 gazillion to the Gates Foundation, only 5% of that money will actually go to charitable causes, the absolute minimum required by law. The 95% that's remaining? Why, that goes into the foundation's investment portfolio, of course. You can't run a good charity without hoarding money, silly. Don't believe me? Sources are in the description, as always. I don't just make this stuff up. It's section 4942 of the Internal Revenue Code, and every foundation has clearly understood it to mean don't give more than 5%. The bottom line is that we are a simple rounding error off from the Gates Foundation using all of the money it gets from its key investors, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, to do exactly the same stuff it would be doing outside the charity, putting it into stocks. Not only that, it's the kind of stocks that make whatever the foundation is trying to do irrelevant. Charitable foundations, including the Gates Foundation, invest in the same profitable companies every other slimy stock portfolio invests in. Fossil fuels like BP, Shell, and Total. Junk food like McDonald's and Coca-Cola. Mining companies like Rio Tinto. Brands politely referred to as agribusiness companies like Nestle and Unilever. Weapons manufacturers like BAE Systems. And a whole lot more companies that can all easily fit into the "we love to commit human rights abuses" list. Considering this is where 95% of the foundation's funds go, this is where it has the most impact on the world. For a guy who claims to be all about global health and fighting climate change, Gates's money says otherwise. But somehow, someway, this gets worse. Because the rest, the 5% meant for actual good, doesn't do good either. It is very often used to make these despicable companies even more profitable by transforming, quote, charitable projects into regular business investments. Money put into the charity side ends up also being for the investment side after all. Take just one example. In 2014, the Gates Foundation had $538 million worth of shares in Coca-Cola. That same year, one of its big charitable projects was training 50,000 farmers in Kenya. The president of the Gates Foundation's Global Development Program said it was all about, quote, empowering small farmers to increase productivity, improve crop quality, and access reliable markets, which is critical to addressing global hunger and poverty. But what was that project really about? Making that investment in Coca-Cola shares more profitable by training those farmers to produce passion fruit destined for the Coca-Cola company. Charity for profit. What a dream. And all across the charity's philanthropic involvement, the story is the same. Any giving that yields a profit, be it by adding new workers or more industrialized production, gets the green light. Beyond this incredible perversion of what charity is supposed to be, actually giving money away, charity, not using loopholes to increase your profits, billionaire philanthropy also poses a massive democratic problem. That's point number 3. Now you do what the big man says. By playing with massive sums of money, both deciding where that money goes and where it doesn't go by taking money away from governments, billionaires decide on policies without actually getting democratic approval. Billionaires have effectively created their own side government that does whatever they want. They get to be their own little dictators. But because their intentions are oh so benevolent, we really just let them do it. Instead of funds being allocated on the basis of our collective decision-making, on the balancing of competing interests for funds, and, in the most ideal scenario, equitable distribution of money in the interest of equality, billionaires put money wherever they want to do whatever they please. If Gates just really loves charter schools, boom, now he decides that charter schools get more funding. If he wants more farms for his fizzy brown drink friends, boom, now a city's worth of people is gonna grow some fruit, damn it. This is a tremendous abuse of power from a guy whose best quality was being picked last for dodgeball in middle school. He is not accountable to anyone. His decisions are entirely his own or those of the people he decides to hire. And we don't have a say. The results of giving a few guys who played the system as much say as they want on who gets money and who doesn't are never good. They already do enough of that in the workplace, in the stock market, during the hiring process, in the rest of the economy, and now in charity too. And look, I get that giving money to the US government isn't great. Our government is garbage, and if we gave the US more of this dirty Bill Gates money, we'd get about 4 minutes of celebration before they blew it all on a new drone to kill brown kids in another country. But some of that money would actually go back to us. It would materially improve our lives. The amount we would have a say over, however limited by the more undemocratic parts of our government, would be distributed more fairly and more justly than by letting one guy have the final say on all of it. On top of that, one guy who sucks. Of course, the government can't do everything. But one guy, or just a few guys, pretending that they can is far, far worse. Building our system around letting a guy like Bill profit off of charity, become this glorified leader of sustainable development while stripping everyday people of reasonable pay, rights, access to common goods, and roping in a new generation of people into undemocratic, exploitative work is, well, bad. Billionaires, bad. Charity is just the way they keep this system churning out more people like them. Talking about the charitable bourgeoisie, Oscar Wilde said, "They seriously and very sentimentally set themselves to the task of remedying the evils that they see in poverty. But their remedies do not cure the disease. They merely prolong it. The proper aim is to try and reconstruct society on such a basis that poverty will be impossible. It is immoral to use private property in order to alleviate the horrible evils that result from the institution of private property. It is both immoral and unfair. We are often told that the poor are grateful for charity. Some of them are, no doubt. But the best amongst the poor are never grateful. They are ungrateful, discontented, disobedient, and rebellious. They are quite right to be so. Charity they feel to be a ridiculously inadequate mode of partial restitution, or a sentimental dole, usually accompanied by some impertinent attempt on the part of the sentimentalist to tyrannize over their private lives. Why should they be grateful for the crumbs that fall from the rich man's table? They should be seated at the board, and are beginning to know it. The philanthro-capitalist model of charity embraced by these high-horse-riding technocrats does not rid the world of poverty. Its sole purpose is justifying the neoliberal model of capitalism that creates it. that gives a few rich parasites more money than billions of people put together, and that only works by keeping a significant chunk in abject poverty. It puts little band-aids on the most gruesome injuries of capitalism, never questioning how so many people got hurt as a consequence. All the while, they continue to make truly impossible to conceptualize sums of money, get to whitewash their horrible actions and hide them behind good intentions, and promote the idea that having a few well-meaning rich assholes is somehow better than no uber-wealthy rich assholes and a well-engineered system that puts enough money into everyone's hands to live a good life. They put back into the system just enough money to stop the pot from boiling over, and that's it. They think you're stupid and dirty and worthless. Billionaire philanthropy is a scam. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this kind of content is made possible by my patrons on Patreon. As you can probably imagine, when I made the switch to producing political content, I started getting demonetized way more often, and most of my sponsors bailed. It's understandable, but because of this, I'm having to rely more heavily on viewers like you. If you like the kind of videos I'm producing, and you're able to chip in even $1 a month, I would greatly appreciate the support. As a little show of that appreciation, every patron, regardless of donation amount, gets early access to every video, plus access to our patrons-only Discord server. We actually just dropped a major update to the Discord, and there are some really cool new features. We've got everything from a recommended reading list, to a book club, to special channels for our neurodivergent and LGBT comrades. We also have fun medal rolls for people who complete the server challenges. We've built a great little community, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. So if you'd like to help support my channel, join the Discord, and get early access to every video, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like. If you hated it, a thumbs down. You can check out my previous videos by clicking the links on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.